Pause. Can I get a cup of water? Because my mouth
Yes,
is going to be dry as
Hear me
well.
out.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We're on our second episode of Hear Me Out, and today we're covering the topic of identity. So here I have two of my speakers. It's
Hi, I'm Fatih.
Hi, I'm Aisha.
and I'm a lead discussion today, and I'm Darren. We all know us from the previous episode, so we're just gonna head right in. So identity, few of the sources that I come through, and also knowing of my personal experience, identity is described as a complex and multifaceted concept that encompasses the characteristics a person has, their qualities, their beliefs, values, and experiences, and how that defines them as an individual or a group. So it's a dynamic thing and it's constantly changing. It's good to think of identity as not a static thing, and it can change over time based on your life experiences, your personal growth, and societal influences. And there's different types of identity, right? We can look into personal identity, social identity, your cultural identity, gender identity, ethnic identity, national identity, professional identity, and most importantly, your intersectional identity, which we'll get to later. So I'm gonna head it off and send the smooth the conversation to our speakers. What do you think about identity? What is it to you? How do you understand it? And what are your personal relationships with your identity? Yep, go ahead, Fatih.
First of all, wow. Identity is a really, really deep subject. And I don't think whatever we say during this time that we have together, we can really get into the depths of it. However, um, to just scratch the surface of things and speak from like my point of view and my experiences, it's what society labels us, puts us in a box, gives us an identity. For example, from the day that we're born, we're given a name, we're given a citizenship, nationality, a race, all these identities that are just like stamped onto us like labels. And then as we grow older, as we figure ourselves out more, as we find our place in society, we actually get to deny, reject these labels that have been put on us, or embrace them and feel a part of the community that we're put in. So it's very, very complex.
Yeah, I really like how you've put that. Like you are born into a community, and that might already mean that you're associated with a certain group of identity, and then how you grow to, yeah, be able to reject that or choose for yourself or find out more about yourself or just simply change. Um, do you have anything to add, Aisha?
Yeah, I quite like that little timeline as well. Um, yeah, I would just like to add how it's quite interesting that today in our day, we have a voice to change and, you know, um, say what we are and what our identity is. But thinking about it in the historical context, you used to be what you were assigned, and then coming out of that societal box was really difficult. But yeah, that thinking about that transformation and how that timeline of identity being assigned and us discovering it and having a voice in sharing what our identity really is, that kind of evolving timeline is what I was thinking of. Yeah, so I thought I'd point out that historical change.
Hmm. And I think with identity, we really see that certain communities can have prejudices or biases against others, and these create these things we call stereotypes, where a certain identity is associated with a certain way of appearing in society, and this can have negative connotations on that like individual, on that community. Do you have personal experiences, or would like to add on, the concept of stereotypes? Yep, go ahead, Fatih.
I'm just kind of branch off here a little
Go
bit.
ahead.
Um, I think before we start talking about our personal experience, we need to acknowledge that identity is a very, very, how can I say, fragile subject where individuals' identities can be used against them in a negative way. It can be used to segregate people, groups of people. It can be used to um, draw borders of countries and create political division and put people in boxes. But at the same time, it's a very, very strong tool to also bring people together, to put people under the same umbrella, to work towards certain goals, certain values, certain belief systems. And it's very, very complex in the sense that it can be on either ends of the spectrum, very positive and very negative at the same time. I just wanted to add that in there.
Yeah, and I think easily just going off of what you said and taking this branch as like I guess the new timeline for this conversation, um, it's that a personal experience of mine, as you have put, that our identities can be used against us to, you said, draw borders and lines and of segregation, and we live in a physical manifestation of what you just said, am I right? Like as Cypriot, we live in a world where things for us, against us, or under the name of us have happened, where we now live in a world that puts us into these labels and boxes. And in our own homeland, we find constant segregation in our daily lives. And whether that's with your Turkish speaking identity or Greek speaking identity, or with your Armenian Cypriotness, or with all of these plethora of communities that are just like used to thrive in Cyprus. Now here we are, and yeah, it's like a more political take on this conversation, but it's a real one as we live it daily. How would you, yeah, would you have anything to say? Yes, Aisha.
Yeah, so thinking about identity in society and how it is in a sense um ingrained in people's minds to like kind of enforce the societal boxes. So we are born with the idea that, how do I say it? Like, so we are taught about, say, genders and race, and we know it how it is. And then the people who are, say, in positions of authority have this, take it kind of as a mission to enforce those societal ideas, those boxes. So it's quite interesting how, as human beings, that, for example, where I'm getting to is I'm going to go into a personal experience from my life, but it's so easy for another individual to kind of tell you who you are, and they might say this because that's what they know or that's how they were brought up, but it's quite interesting how people kind of, some deeply believe that they must enforce these societal ideas of identity. Like, for example, in living in the UK as a Cypriot, when I meet some people, I introduce myself as a Cypriot. And because, it's a tiny island and sometimes the political or general history might not be broadly known. And people tell me like, oh, then you're Greek, then you're Turkish because you're from Cyprus. And, they find it in themselves that they are able to tell me where I'm from and what my identity is. And yeah, I find that quite interesting how some individuals can just go ahead and say to you what you are and what your identity is. That was my personal take on that.
Yeah, thank you. And I think with a Cypriot context, it might be especially sensitive because we're not from any domineering part of the world, and our community is quite volatile in itself. So you kind of, when you're in a place as we are, you might feel obligated to be nationalistic or um, find yourself as like a leading voice in representing your community, as there isn't much of it. For that reason, exactly as you have put, I think it's a constant thing and a relatable one that I also run into in my life, whether I'm from and why I am from that place and what kind of identity I come with when I am from this place, specifically Cyprus. Um, yeah, so moving on from that, not really moving on, but adding on to that, how do we navigate and reconcile different aspects of our identity in various social and cultural contexts? So this could look like code switching and how you appear in sort of space. This is quite relevant to me as going off of again the Cypriot context. If I am asked, what my identity is like ethnically or nationally, I get to pick from three categories. I can say that I'm a Cypriot. In some context, it's more important to say that I'm a Turkish Cypriot. In another, that I am just a Turkish-speaking Cypriot. And the fact that I even have these kind of differences is just, it's just like, I think it further highlights the volatility of this identity, because to be able to recognize as valid in different spaces, I have to go around and code switch. And that can appear as the kind of dialect I speak, um, whether it's like the proper mainland Turkish or the Cypriot dialect, and so on. So if you have anything to add. Yes, Fatih.
First of all, I just want to say that identity alone is very, very just a ball of yarn that is so like entangled within itself that we can't pull apart. And then putting onto that the Cypriot identity, it is very much a room full of chaos. To expand on the Cypriot identity and to give some of my personal experiences. So for the viewers that are watching or listening that don't know a little bit about the situation in Cyprus, just a brief overview. The island of Cyprus is currently divided into two, and there is a majority of Turkish-speaking Cypriots or Turkish Cypriots on the north, among other minority communities, and majority of Greek Cypriots or Greek-speaking Cypriots on the south, among other minority communities as well. So I'm a Turkish Cypriot. I'm Cypriot at first, and I live on the north and I study on the south. And with this brings very interesting interactions. I always identify with my Cypriot identity. So when I first started going to uni on the south, meeting new people from all around the world, I would always introduce myself like, "Hi, I'm Fatih, I'm Cypriot." And I would get a few reactions. For those international students, it would be like, "Oh, cool," no questions asked. But I would sometimes have interactions of like, "Oh, hi, my name's Fatih, I'm Cypriot." Confusion. And then the conversation, they wanted to like drag the conversation in Greek, but I don't speak Greek. So I would be like, "Oh, sorry, I don't speak Greek, I speak Turkish." And then I would have the reaction of either more confusion or there's even been instances where people have just got up and walked away. And this is how this is not something that I was prepared for, to like interact in such how can I put it, to have my identity challenged, to actually not be able to say I'm Cypriot, and people just say, okay, it was there was a pause, there was a confusion, there was a "Are you sure?" kind of subtones in that. Even when I try to explain and I try to stay neutral and make sure that I'm in a position of educating people in the sense that, yes, I'm also Cypriot, I'm also a person from this island. It's something that I find myself doing. Now, the question of whether I should be in that position, whether I should be the one to educate people is a whole nother subject. But it's what is put upon me. And after a certain while, you kind of have to change your outlook on it. You have to say, it's not my place, it's not my time. Maybe I don't have the energy for it, but it's my identity and it's what I see myself with. So if I want to hold on to my identity, I need to explain, and I shouldn't have to, but I do, to make people question, to make people think. It's very, very complex.
And exactly, it's very, very complex. And like you've added, it is also because you're not just Cypriot at the end of the day, right? Because you're also a student in this space. You're also a male appearing student in this space. And all of these different identities come together to create this unique one. And yeah, Aisha?
Yeah, hearing Fatih talk about such experience that's dear to my heart as well. I thought about how when I'm introducing myself, sometimes I tend to become a little bit defensive. I get prepared to defend my identity and kind of defend who I am when someone tells me, no, you're not this, you're that, and then I have to, in my mind, I have to be prepared to like fight for who I am. And you know, thinking about it, I mean, it's my opinion, but it shouldn't be like that. People should be like, okay, that's fine, that's your identity, who you are. Um, yeah, it's like a little side note, I guess.
Thank you. Exactly. And to add on to the intersectionality aspect of it, so which is exactly what I meant earlier about we're different identities at the same time. We belong to different communities and different spaces. We we could be religious, and that is a community for us. Then there's national identity, like I've mentioned earlier, personal identity, your gender identity, and there's all of these come together to create like that little like intersecting point, and that's your unique experience. And to go off of my personal one, I the two most highlighting identities in my life that I have to, I guess, I deal with on a daily basis because of people's reactions or how I appear is yes, it's me being Cypriot and also my queerness, appearing and being gender non-conforming in the world. It is it is that I yes, I am a Turkish speaking Cypriot, but then I'm also queer in a way which adds more discrimination into my life or more stereotypes to live by and then deny or reject and continue searching for niche spaces where I can be comfortable in. That it's like it's a unique experience in itself. And to kind of add another example of my life, I don't know if in this recording you can see, but after my name there's the they, them, theirs pronouns. And I think this can add to the conversation of like code switching. So they, them, theirs, if you don't know, is an English gender neutral pronoun to refer to someone who would prefer it that way, right? It doesn't really matter whether they identify with like an in-between gender or an outside gender, but it's a form of referring to someone. And in my case, I find it relevant sometimes. So I am not just Cypriot and queer, I also am an international student. I study abroad, and a lot of my interactions happen in English. For that reason, this is the language I will to lead my life, and I have to be perceived with that language. That's why I opt to choose the they, them, theirs pronoun when I introduce myself so that people refer to me in that way and I know I'm recognized in that way. But optimally, I don't care that much because my mother tongue is Turkish, and for the Turkish speakers, we know that there's not really a gendered way you can refer to someone using pronouns. We have the single letter O, and O refers to anyone. It's gender neutral. For that reason, it's also a counterintuitive process for me because when I first started to question my identity, which I think is like a very intensive personal growth kind of timeline that we all live if we do it, and I continue to do it on a daily basis. When I have been going through that for my gender identity, the last the last cherry on top, or like you build a cake up from the bottom up, and the last thing I did was, okay, let me choose my pronoun so that maybe people perceive it. But when I first introduced myself and I add my pronoun to the introduction, it's the first outlet into my take of an identity. So it's very counterintuitive, and it's like I'm coming from bottom up and you're coming from top down, and it's like for that reason, conveying yourself in the world with so much intersectionality, or like truly being able to portray why you are like it's yeah. Sorry, I'm just spiraling right now. Please take it away.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's it's very difficult because we live in a society that has these social boxes um, that society puts us into for just simple mental understanding of if a person is in this box, they come with these characteristics and stereotypes. So one way that I like to look at it is you've had your whole life to deal with your identity. This person has had the past 1 minute. Give them another 5 minutes to just digest it a little bit. It's again on our behalf to put in the effort, maybe, but it's the steps that we need to take in order for people to, in order for us to give people the space to just think and to question and to understand that maybe things are not the way that they have been taught or the way that society has structured them. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Do you have anything to add, Aisha? And you don't need to,
Mm,
it's fine. Yeah.
no, it's okay for now.
Yeah, okay. And so kind of what I want to do now is um maybe like this one question of, and which is like a little bit of tying it back to the beginning, but can you share like a significant moment or experience that has like, I don't know, instilled a moment in your life that was profound, and it pushed you to maybe start questioning your identity for certain reasons, or has an impact on your sense of identity? Yep, go ahead, Swati.
There's no specific identity that this experience is attached to, but in the context of having society tell us what our identities mean. So let me elaborate. In middle school and beginning of high school, every year we would go to school, but before, in like the orientation week, we can call it, we used to get these little papers of like code of conduct. And in that paper, it used to say that boys should have short, smart haircuts. And for me, that was like in my head, it didn't fit right. I was like, what does my identity of gender or sex have to do with the length of my hair? What does how is that connected? I'm I still present as male if I have long hair or short hair. If I have, I don't know, if I anything that it's not tied to that. It's simplified to such a surface level thing that boys should have short, smart haircuts. And I feel like that was one of my pivotal points where I was like, started questioning these things. What does it actually mean? Why do I have to abide by these rules? Why should boys have short, smart haircuts? If I don't have a short haircut, am I not smart? If I have a short haircut, am I smart? Does that equal that? If I have long hair, am I not a boy? Like all this triangle of complicated identity. And it was the moment of retaliation for me. I was like, no, even though I didn't want long hair, even though I didn't care for it, even though it, did not suit me, I grew my hair out. I was like, I'm not cutting it. Like the rules don't make sense. And subsequently I was called into the headmaster's office. It was like, what is this, what is happening, why don't you sign the code of conduct? And I was like, because it says boys should have short smart haircuts. I'm doing fine at school, I'm not bothering anyone. It makes no sense. And I think that was the pivotal point for me to start questioning things and understanding that everything presented to us is not the right way, sometimes, and we should take a moment to actually question where these are coming from. Why are these rules or standards expected from us? Why were they set in the first place? And then stems all the other identities from that.
Yes, Aisha, please.
Yeah, thinking about where everything starts, and immediately, and also with what you said, Fatih, I started thinking about my own experiences in school and with uniform. And yeah, how it's so interesting how little girls get to know their identity as, as a girl, if from the minute they are put into the school. We have a lot of regulations on, say, if we want to wear a skirt, the length of it, or how our hair is meant to be, and similar things that are there for boys too. But there was a lot of emphasis on um, why we shouldn't wear skirts, and the whole temptation thing as well, which I don't want to get into that much. But yeah, so I guess one of the very important takeaways of this conversation is where where this identity thing starts becoming ingrained in our brains, and one of the large players of this game is school. It all starts in family and school, I think. And yeah, that's all I'm adding for now.
I mean, I really like the position, the points you're making. And as someone who now is comfortable in their identity of being gender non-conforming, definitely like growing up in a world so gendered, it was always that when any supposed like necessity was associated with or attributed to a certain gender, I was like, hello. And then this obviously just pushed me to further question other third parts of identity, right? Like, why does this stereotype have to fit with that one, and so on. And for that reason, I think what I'm trying to like trickle it down to is that best way to start exploring one's own identity is by starting to ask questions about why certain things, like in your case, Fatih, that boys had to have this short, smart haircut at school for whatever inexplicable reasons, because they didn't really have a justification for you, right? Ever. And it's like asking those questions of who is it serving? What system has set this in the first place? And then how do I go on to bring it down, if that's, I guess, the ultimate goal? And it's just starting to ask these questions and encouraging. I would like to encourage our listeners to reflect on their own identities and continue exploring this topic and seeking seeking first of all comfort with oneself, like before you venture into the world with how you maybe appear or what kind of reactions you receive. Start to be able to sit with yourself in a room, to the extent that you are comfortable with yourself. You don't need to be proud with yourself, but be it's just yeah, I think I can't really elaborate what I'm trying to get to because that process looks different for everyone. And you can definitely seek help if needed. That's why I think I always just advise therapy for whatever reason. Like therapy doesn't need to be something for people like we've stigmatized and we're completely going on a tangent. But it's like if any of my speakers have anything to add, I would like us to like start circling it around and coming to an end. But yeah, that's anything to say? Mm, are we all good? Yeah, Patu.
Just to conclude, I just want to say that we are put in a society with so many rules, so many expectations, so many boxes, and I invite everyone to just um, question what you were told, question the things that were seen as the norm, embrace change, have open arms to acceptance and to um, differences. Focus on what we have in common, but also celebrate our differences. Don't use differences to divide, but use them as to show that we are unique in each and every way in ourselves.
That was such a wonderful note, and I think it's very appropriate to end it on that. Thank you very much, Pati. Thank you very much, Aisha. I love this episode, and thank you for listening. And if you have watched, thank you for doing that as well. have a great rest of the day if you have that. Thank you.
Thank you, Daran.
Yes. Bye bye.